Smoky Mountains National Park, one of my favorite things to do with photography by far. I wanted to share some tips on some of the essential gear that you need for waterfall photography. This is a big thing because waterfalls are kind of like a niche topic within outdoor photography because you have to think about some of the movement that you're shooting with waterfalls and how you want the final result of the image to turn out. So what we need to think about in this video is what is the essential setup gear-wise for shooting your waterfall photography. Now, when you're shooting waterfall photography, one of the first pieces of gear that you really need to think about and consider when you're purchasing your gear is a tripod. And you want a really solid tripod. It can be aluminum, it can be carbon fiber, whatever you want to have whenever you're hiking to these locations is up to you, but you want to be sure that when you're using your tripod, your camera stays sturdy. This is because for waterfall photography in particular, we're shooting really long exposures. We're talking like 1 to 2 seconds to 5 seconds. You can shoot a really long exposure with waterfall photography. So that's why a tripod comes in handy. There's no way you can handhold your camera and keep it still whenever you're photographing your waterfalls. That's gonna show up a lot of movement and blurring with your subjects. So you want your camera to stay really still on your tripod to be sure that your photo comes out really crisp, and you want the option there to be able to move your camera around to different compositions, tilting it down, whatever you want to do, and keep that camera still. That's your main objective. You can get a tripod with a ball head attached, or you can also get a tripod that has a ball head that is separate, and you can buy the two pieces separately. Whatever you want to do is up to you. Sometimes the ball heads that are sold separately are a little more sturdy than some of these, but if you're using something like a mirrorless camera, this is going to do just fine, and it's going to hold your camera in place. So we've talked about the tripod and the ball head. Now let's talk about the camera itself. The camera honestly doesn't really matter that much. If you're using a small crop sensor mirrorless camera all the way to a full frame DSLR camera, you can shoot waterfalls. You just need to make sure that you can use your camera in something like aperture priority or manual mode that will allow you to choose the correct aperture that you're using, because what you want that to do is allow you to lengthen that exposure to a really long length. So I always like to be sure that my camera can go to f/16, ISO 100, and something like a 2-second exposure to capture like silky smooth water with crisp subjects around that water. Now, lenses are really interesting with waterfall photography because you can shoot them with a variety of lens options that you have available to you as an outdoor photographer. Number one, I love using a wide angle lens when I'm shooting outdoor waterfall scenes because it allows you to stretch foregrounds and get really wide scenes into one frame. This is a 12mm ultra wide lens for that, but you can also get something like an 18 to 55. Even if you're using a kit lens like that, you can definitely do it. Speed on the lens doesn't technically matter because you're using typically something like f/16 to f/14 to capture these waterfalls. So something like f/2.8 is very rarely used in waterfall photography. Now you can also use something like a 70-200 f/4 that's going to capture a lot of intimate details and abstract scenes for waterfalls to give you kind of a different look, a compressed look of a waterfall scene that will take away a lot of those big foregrounds that a wide angle lens will give you, but it'll allow you to get more creative with your shots and the flow of the water and capture maybe some standing still tree trunks along with the water moving behind it, and allow you to capture a lot of contrast and movement when you're shooting with a telephoto lens versus a wide angle lens. Now, the last and honestly the most important thing to get when you're photographing waterfalls is a circular polarizer. Now, you can get rectangular or square polarizers as well. But a circular polarizer will simply attach to the end of your lens by screwing it on to your lens thread. This will allow you as a photographer to use your lens and your circular polarizer much like your eyes would use polarized sunglasses. Now this reduces the reflective glare on top of the water, and as you spin your circular polarizer, what happens to that surface glare is it's removed. Sometimes this will allow you to see a little bit under the surface of the water and photograph some more intricate compositions and some more unique compositions when you're shooting waterfalls, seeing those areas underneath the water and using those as foreground elements in your photography. This will also allow you to create more contrast in your images, show a lot more white water versus that darker water that appears because of the circular polarizer, creating more highlights and shadows next to each other and creating a more compelling photograph because of it. So obviously from this video, you can see that waterfall photography requires some pretty specific pieces of gear that you can use to shoot them best, create some big foregrounds and create some intricate details, maybe with something like a telephoto lens. They're not that hard to shoot and they don't require a lot of specific gear, but knowing which gear to use is extremely helpful when you're setting up your composition and trying to get a high quality image of your favorite waterfall, whether that be in Great Smoky Mountain National Park or anywhere close to your home. Using these pieces of gear are going to set you up for some high quality, professional-esque photos in the outdoor scene. I'm about to go capture some of mine here in the Smokies, so I'll see you guys later.